Hello, it's me, it's Katie again. I am recording a video tonight because I had so much fun on Monday night when I recorded my journaling video. So I wanted to pop in. It's been a long day. I'm really tired. You could probably see it on my face, but I really wanted to spend a little bit of time um, talking to you about a few books that I finished recently. I'm really excited about them, and I wanted to talk about them before I have to return them to the library because they're going back to the library tomorrow. So today, there's three books that I've read recently that are so good, and I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about them. I don't want to yak your ear off. And sorry if you can see the light in my glasses. I don't have the really fancy glasses that reflect that light that make it so you can't see it. I have just regular old glasses. And so I'm trying to stay out of the line of the light, but I also need it because my house is pretty dark. So anyway, so there's three books I want to talk about. One is The Safekeep. Um, the other book I want to talk about is Martyr. And then the third book I want to talk about is The Happening. So I am hoping I can figure out how to put chapters down below. So if there's one book that you're interested in hearing about and not the rest, then you can just kind of zoom past and just listen to what you want to listen to. But if I can't figure that out, I'm really sorry. I'll try to make sure you can see what the covers are so you can fast forward if that's better for you. Um, but the first book we'll talk about is The Safekeep. I listened to that on audio, so I'll just show you what that cover looks like. Um, it's right here. The Safekeep. It's got a picture of two little pears on it. And the author's name is Yael van der Wooden. And I don't know a lot about her. I do know that I think she grew up partly in Israel and partly in Amsterdam. I could be wrong. I should have done more research, but she has a really interesting background. And this book I read it because it was on the Booker long list, and I was thrilled. I finished it on the Sunday before the Booker shortlist was announced, so one day before. And at first I did not have it on my shortlist, but then after I finished it, I was like, yes, this is on my shortlist. And so the premise of the story is that it's set in post World War II Amsterdam, and the main character is Isabel, and she is this 20, I think maybe her late 20s, and she is very controlling. She is living alone in the house where she grew up with her mother and her two brothers, and you learn more about their pretty tragic backstory as the story goes on. But she is living alone in this house, and she's very obsessed with order and control. She wants to know that her mother's plates are where they're supposed to be, and she wants to know how many forks there are, and she's sort of obsessed with things going missing. And then her brother, Louis, I think he was Louis, his girlfriend comes to stay with Isabel, and her girlfriend's name is Eva. And at first, Isabel is completely angry and hostile towards Eva. But slowly things start to change and they become involved romantically. And it's really, really interesting to watch these two women form this relationship, except especially Isabel, who, as, in the beginning of the story, she is incredibly oppressed and so unsure about her own identity and who she is and who she loves and what's her purpose in life. And so when she meets Eva, that begins to really change for her. Um, and at first, I wasn't sure why would this be on the Booker list. And then you get, I don't know, maybe about two-thirds through the book, and then you learn about Eva herself. And that completely changed the whole picture. It just was stunning what happened. And I can't tell you anything about it because if I do, that will ruin it for you. And I don't want to do that. So just know that you might be unsure about what the purpose is in reading this. But once you get to the part about Eva, it starts to become much more clear. And just so you know, going into it, there's quite a bit of explicit, there's many explicit scenes in the video. I'll just say that. So, not in the video, in the book. I'll just say that. And so it might be that if you're uncomfortable with that, you could fast forward through it or flip through the pages if you're reading on paper. Um, and I've seen some people say, well, why is that in there at all? They didn't feel like it really furthered the narrative. And I think that it did. I did think it was important because it showed exactly how oppressed Isabel was. I get them mixed up, Eva and Isabel, and how just, I said oppressed, but also just not confident in who she is at all. And whenever then once she becomes involved in this relationship, then you start to see things evolve and in a different light. So it was fabulous. It was beautifully written. I just thought it was amazing, and I was so happy when watching the shortlist announcement from the Booker prizes. I was so happy to see that it was included. So that was one book, The Safekeep. The other book I want to talk about is Martyr, which I think a lot of you have read. It's been around a little while. It's by Kaveh Akbar. So this was published 2024, so this year. It's on the long list of the National Book Award. But I know probably, let's see, it's in September. So I think probably in the wintertime, a lot of my blogging friends were reading this, and I just now got to it. This book was so much fun. I'm trying to get it out of the light. Here, that ought to do it. Um, so this book is about this young 20-something man. His name is Cyrus. He was born in Iran, and he and his father moved to the United States when Cyrus was just a baby, because Cyrus's mother was in a tragic plane crash. The plane that she was in was shot down by a United States Navy ship, completely accidental by the United States Navy. I have no idea. I should have looked this up. I don't know if that was an actual event that happened at the time in the late 90s. I don't know. But that's what happened to Cyrus's mom. And so he and his father moved to, I think it was Illinois. I think it was outside of Chicago. And Cyrus's father worked on a chicken farm, and he worked very hard. He had very long hours. He worked 6 days a week. He was exhausted. He was gone before the sun came up and back home before after the sun went down. You know, he worked really hard. And Cyrus went to college. And after he went to college, it was as if his father said, "Okay, my job here is done. My job here on earth is done." And he died. And so not Keva, Cyrus was left as an orphan in his late teens, early 20s. And all through adolescence and his early 20s, he struggled with addiction and his identity and who he was. He never felt really comfortable. Um, but in his late 20s, he got sober. And when he got sober, he started becoming obsessed with this idea of martyrs and thinking about how he believed the death of his parents, their deaths were meaningless, basically. And he became obsessed with people who he believed had meaningful deaths. And of course, in turn, meaning that their lives were also meaningful. And Cyrus became obsessed with his own death and wanting it to become meaningful. And he learns through his friends about an artist in Brooklyn. Her name is Orkida, and she has stage 4 breast cancer. And she's decided that her last few days on earth, she will be an art exhibit. And it's called Death Speak. And people will come and talk to her very intimately and talk to her about death. So Cyrus goes and sees her. And he goes back the next day and then back the next day. And they form this really interesting friendship. And you learn some really interesting things about Orkida herself. And Cyrus learns exactly how connected we all are and how we all have meaningful lives. And our deaths have meanings for other people. And it sounds like a very serious and sad book. And there were parts that were pretty moving, but also there were parts that were really funny and really well done. And this book does not take itself too seriously, despite how serious the topic is. So it was a lot of fun. The author, um, Keva Akbar, is a poet. I'm just trying to see if his picture is in here. I don't see his picture. But he's a poet, and I haven't read any of his poetry. Oh, it's kind of here on the back. You see, he seems like a very young man. And I haven't read any of his poetry, but I am interested in trying some of it. I don't know if any of you have read his poetry. If you have, tell me about it and tell me where I should start, because I do want to read more by this guy. He seems really, really entertaining and thoughtful and fun and deep without being too serious. So, Martyr by Keva Akbar. And so it feels great actually to have read this, because I already had it in my stack of books to read for the end of September when the National Book Award was announced. So I feel like I kind of got a head start on that award reading. So that's the second book I want to talk about, Martyr. Now, the third book I want to talk about is Happening by Annie Ernaux. And Annie Ernaux is a writer in France. So this is translated, it's not translated fiction because it's a memoir, but this is a translated work. So I was really happy to have found translated work, because that's one of the things that I'm trying to read more of this year. And I have a big goal for 2025, which I'll tell you as time goes on. So, Happening is the memoir that Annie wrote about being an early 20 something. I think she was 23 at the time in France, and she became pregnant. And it was devastating. She was a first generation college student. She really saw this as an opportunity to break the cycle of poverty. So the idea of having a baby as a 23-year-old single, young woman, it wasn't going to happen. Um, and so this memoir is pulled from Annie's journal at the time and her her day book, her planner, basically, and some of the images that are just seared into her brain as in 1963, trying to find a way to end an unwanted pregnancy. This is before, in the United States, Roe v. Wade was in the 70s, and I'm not sure when laws changed in France, but there was no there was no protection for women who wanted to end in pregnancy, doctors who provided health care for these women. It was, well, not to be too political, but it was basically how it is now in the United States, unfortunately. But Amy wrote this memoir feeling safe in the late 90s, because she said, we have these protections now, but we need to remember what life was like before the protections. And I don't follow Annie Ernaux in the world, so I do not know what she's saying about uh, political changes in the United States, or if she's been commenting at all, but I would be really interested to hear what she had to say. So it would be awesome if she was going on tour in the United States and giving lectures. I would totally do my best to try to go see her, because just for this topic alone. But this memoir it's very short. I double checked. It's 96 pages. I literally read it in an afternoon, which I don't finish books in a single afternoon anymore. That's just not the life I live, sadly. But I couldn't stop reading. There were some scenes that were very difficult to read. Not only emotional scenes, but there were also some really difficult descriptive scenes as well of what it was like to end this pregnancy in a non-hospital setting. And you hear horror stories from other women that tried to help Annie through this process, and stories about themselves or women that they knew um, that did not work out well. So this feels like a really timely memoir to read. It won't take you a lot of time. It won't it's not difficult to read as far as language. It's not super poetic or flowery, and you're not going to get bogged down in the language. What's difficult is the emotions to process and the imagery that I think is the imagery itself is going to be what stays with me probably the longest. So, Happening by Annie Ernaux. It was fabulous. It's fabulous, especially if you are looking for more women in translation. I'm planning to read another Annie Ernaux in November. I'm sorry, October. I can't remember which one it is now, and I don't have that particular notebook with me, but um, I will link it in the description box, and I'll talk about it on my blog on Friday too. So if you wanted to read an Annie Ernaux with me next month, I would love to have someone to read it with. So, Happening by Annie Ernaux. Um, and oops, sorry about that. And so those were the three books that I wanted to talk to you about. Right now, I'm reading Bel Canto, Bel Canto by Ann Patchett. I'm so excited. I'm only about 50 pages through it. Um, this was a Women's Prize winner in 2002, I think. And so I am really excited to really dig into it. Uh, and I know a lot of you have read it because I know a lot of you are Ann Patchett completionists, and I am not. I've only read a few of her newer novels and one or two of her memoirs. So I am looking forward to adding Ann Patchett to the list of authors that I'm going to be reading either every month or every other month. I'm going to work on that in 2025. So that is all I have for you today. Hopefully this video isn't too long. This doesn't tell me um, how it's about 16 minutes. That's what I recorded on Monday too. I was hoping this one would be shorter, but so I'm going to stop right there. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited that I was able to talk to you about these books. I love talking about books, you know that, and it's great to be able to make it a little more casual and not just typed up and written, and then you read it, and that's just fun to just feel like I'm chatting with you. So thank you so much, and until next time, bye bye.